It's time to duel.
As 2020 winds down and I continue to just absolutely cram in anime and manga before the year ends, I thought it would be fun to revisit one of my previous videos for this week's podcast while I continue to research for my other 2 episodes to end of the year. Prior to my return in the fall to YouTube, one of my most viewed videos was my top 5 anime that need a reboot. Despite me joking about people getting butthurt in the opening of the video itself actually had a very positive reception. And funny enough, I actually had a few predictions that were actually right. If you want to see the original video for yourselves, I've got a link in the description down below. In revisiting this video, I wanted to go over some of the things I got right, some of the things I got wrong, and or missed, and a few other miscellaneous notes at the end. Should be a fun time. So, with the intro out of the way, my name is Axel Ablaze, and this is the top 5 anime that need a reboot revisited. So, let's start off with the things that I got right, because turns out that there are more things that I got wrong than I got right. So let's start out on a positive note. So, biggest thing that I got right by far was the fact that I had Shaman King getting a reboot on my top 5 list. I had it in my number 4 spot, and I feel like I had given pretty good reasoning as to why I thought that it was likely to get a reboot, but not necessarily as likely as some of the others. I underestimated the power that Shaman King had in actually getting a reboot. But don't get me wrong, I am absolutely thrilled. I've seen, the teaser trailers for it. It looks fantastic so far. I am so excited for when it premieres in the spring. I think it's going to be fantastic. The only thing, like I said, I had wrong was just my placement on my list. I thought that there were going to be 3 other series that had a higher chance of getting a reboot than Shaman King did, but turns out that Shaman King had the best shot at having a reboot. So I am very proud of actually making that prediction. And again, the original video is from June of 2019, so I made this prediction well before the announcement was made, and I was, oh man, you don't know how tempted I was to come back and make a video as soon as I saw that Shaman King got that announcement. I was gonna be like, I told you it was getting a reboot, but no, I held off on coming back to YouTube until the fall of this year. So yeah, that was a thing. So that was definitely the biggest thing that I got right. The other one that I got right was the fact that I said that Bleach didn't need a reboot, it needed a continuation, and sure enough, it was announced that Bleach was going to continue after all. I don't know that Bleach has gotten a confirmed start date for when they're going to be adapting the rest of the manga into an anime. I don't know if they said that was going to happen in late 2021 or not. And keep in mind, because of the COVID stuff that happened, a lot of the release dates for certain anime and whatnot have been pushed back, which obviously is the big case for the January 2021 anime that are coming out, especially since a lot of those happening in January were actually originally supposed to happen in fall of this year. So, and that's something I even mentioned in my other podcast video that I made talking about my top 10 new anime of 2021. So yeah, this was one that I was kind of surprised, in all honesty, that it was actually getting a continuation, just because I thought that there was a big enough negative reaction to the ending of Bleach that it wasn't going to get an ending. But by all means, in all honesty, I am happy that Bleach is going to be able to finish in terms of the anime. Were there low points in the final arc? Yes. But overall, it still had a lot of really cool moments in it, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see it animated. Not to mention, with the amount of time that's passed since the original anime and what the continuation is going to be, I really hope that there's also an uptick in animation quality. So we'll just have to see. I mean, it is, I could be wrong in this. I think it's going to be done by Studio Pierrot again, which Studio Pierrot is, you know, they make Boruto, they make Black Clover, they made Naruto, they made several other series, and as we all know, there are the dips in quality with Studio Pierrot work. So, you know, could be good, could be bad. We'll just have to see, you know, which staff members they actually put on the Bleach continuation or not. So, yeah. One of the other things that I got right to a degree here, at the time of making my video, when I was talking about Rave Master and Fairy Tail and Eden Zero, I said at the time that Eden Zero didn't have enough content at the time to warrant having a anime adaptation at the time. Yeah, at that time I was right. But go figure, you know, a year later exactly, because in June of this year was when the Eden Zero anime was announced. So by that time, yeah, I mean, a full year had gone by, you know, an additional 40 plus chapter of manga had been made. So at this point, yeah, it absolutely makes sense that, you know, Eden Zero is going to have an anime, which, you know, kind of further, unfortunately, cements the fact that Rave Master is probably not getting an anime. That just kind of cements it further, which is really disappointing. I mean, that's part of the reason why I put Rave Master at number 5 on my list, even though I was absolutely hopeful that, you know, Rave Master would get a reboot in some capacity, but it's very clear that, you know, Mashima and Weekly Shonen Magazine and them, they wanted to push the current stuff, so yeah, like I said, at the time of me recording the video, no, it didn't make sense that Eden Zero would be getting an anime, but now at this point there's enough content where yes, they can comfortably make an anime, and I do highly recommend it. Eden Zero has been absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Do I think it's as strong as Rave Master? Not necessarily. I'm not at that point yet. I think it's better than Fairy Tail. I'm going to say that. I think that Eden Zero is better than Fairy Tail. I think it takes elements of both Rave Master and Fairy Tail and puts them together in a sci-fi series that works, and I highly recommend it. If you were a fan of Rave Master, if you were a fan of Fairy Tail, give it a shot. It's going to be a fun series when it comes out in the spring along with Shaman King. So right there, 2 series that I'm definitely hyped up for. Another thing, I'm putting this in the what I got right category, but I also put this in the honorable mentions because I made a gag of it. I still think that iShield 21 deserves a reboot to better show off Yusuke Murata's art style. iShield 21 is still regarded as one of the best sports manga in history. It's still on that list of, you know, manga that sold well over 20 million copies. So it's one that I definitely think deserves being touched again, especially because it had 3 arcs that were never made into anime. iShield 21, I firmly believe, is another one of those series that unfortunately was a victim of the weekly continuing anime format from back in the day, but back before, you know, they would make separated seasons for anime like you have right now with My Hero or Haikyuu or The Promised Neverland or Demon Slayer, etc., etc., etc. When you have a weekly show, it's very prone to having, you know, dips in quality. And that's, you know, I'm one of the biggest Black Clover fans out there. I will fully admit it has dips in quality. And, you know, part of the reason right now is that they're doing filler content. But even when they weren't doing filler content, there were episodes where Studio Pierrot just kind of phoned it in. And they fixed it in the Blu-rays, but we don't necessarily have access to the Blu-rays unless we shell out money. So, you know, that's a thing. But even like with One Piece, that's one where, you know, for years, people complained about the anime adaptation for One Piece. People still complain about the anime adaptations for One Piece. The Wano arc right now is fantastic in terms of quality. Is it, you know, is it perfect? No. There's still a lot of inconsistencies, you know, here and there, but the overall quality is a lot better. But it's another series that yet again, you know, suffers from the weekly grind in that it can have dips in quality. And that is definitely something that happened for iShield 21. The iShield 21 anime was unfortunately, it had a lot of bad filler moments and whatnot, and that eventually I think really hurt it. But yeah, I definitely think that it definitely deserves having a reboot, especially if they can more accurately capture Yusuke Murata's art, because that is part of what made Ice Shield 21 so great, was the art in it. Also, Musashi's mohawk. Musashi's mohawk also made Ice Shield 21 in the later part of it, and they did not have it in the anime for whatever reason, but I digress. And that being said, I have news on Ice Shield 21 coming up at the end of this podcast, so stick around for that. One of the other things that I got right, although not as right as I could have been, I had Ouran High School Host Club as an honorable mention in my first list. And it definitely deserved to be mentioned, if not, put at a higher ranking, because Ouran High School Host Club is definitely one of the most popular shoujo series of all time, hands down. Like, they still make stuff for it today, and by all means, this is another series that easily could have an anime reboot today. Again, like, more and more series are getting reboots or continuations nowadays, and with the success of Fruits Basket and its reboot, which I also mentioned in the previous video, which is what, spurned on creating a video, it definitely is a series that I think could get a reboot at some point in time. I don't know necessarily how to gauge it compared to other series, because it has had other content since the original anime came out, but it definitely has that potential. I truly think that Ouran High School Host Club could come back as a rebooted anime today, and people would love it, especially if they, updated the art a little bit. I think that was definitely something that lent to the success of the Fruits Basket reboot, because yeah, there is a very, very strong difference in the art quality from the reboot compared to the original series, or even the original manga. Not that there was anything bad with them, but the reboot just nailed the art. I'm gonna say that. As for the last point that I got right, I had put on my list, I had put Gantz as number 3 on my list for deserving a reboot. And I was right in that it deserved to get new content. I'm just surprised that it's not new anime, because at one point during 2020, it was announced that Hollywood was going to have an adaptation of Gantz. Now, that being said, anything anime in Hollywood right now deserves to be taken with a grain of salt, just again, because of the COVID situation. Not to mention how, all the other series that have been in limbo over the years, from Akira to Cowboy Bebop, there is no guarantees at this point. It's still got that potential that we'll see, Gantz in Hollywood, but I'm gonna hold my breath on it. In the meantime, because, at this point, since I have watched both of the live action movies and I watched the CGI movie from 2016, I would not be opposed to a CGI anime for Gantz, because the CGI anime, movie was fantastic. It was, oh my god, it was so good. Seeing all of the super high-tech equipment from Gantz animated for the first time was freaking amazing. I absolutely loved it. Not to mention the monsters were really well done too. The human characters were all really well done. This is a series that very well could lend itself positively to CGI. I would not be opposed to it. So by all means, I definitely think that Gantz still has that possibility to be rebooted. The interest is clearly still there. The technology is there to create a good series. So yeah, that is another one of the ones that I'm gonna say was in my I got it right category. But with that being said, with that out of the way, we move on to the section where I got things wrong. And first, gonna start off with the fact that one of the things I got wrong was the fact that I kept saying that I was gonna make episodes on certain things that I never ended up doing, and that was majorly in part to the fact that I unfortunately just stopped uploading content back in the summer of 2019 for a multitude of reasons, so that is on me. So I never got to creating an episode where I talked about anime that deserved to have a continuation rather than a reboot, which there are several of them. And in the first video that I had, there were several ones that I think deserve continuations. Two of the ones that I'll mention just right here, I think that both Zatch Bell and Katekyo Hitman Reborn should have continuations because their seasons after the anime ended were good. Zatch Bell's final arc is dark as hell. Like, holy like Zatch Bell got really dark in the final arc, and it was really good. Katekyo Hitman Reborn didn't necessarily get dark. It expanded the lore, and then in the final season, it had one of your cliche "everyone is here" final arc kind of battle royale things. So the arc before it, I liked better. The battle royale arc, it had some nice nods to it, but I definitely think in both cases of both of these series, they deserve a continuation. Give them that opportunity to continue, and I think people will enjoy it. Not to mention, it's an opportunity to resell manga, and that's never a bad idea. I would absolutely love it if I could actually get all of these Zatch Bell manga volumes in English. And same with Reborn, for that matter, because neither of them had full adaptations of their manga in English, and that sucks. It sucks for my collection. I'm just gonna say it. So please bring those back, please. I would love it. One of the other things that I got immediately wrong, and I'm glad I got called out for it, was the fact that Soul Eater did not have a reboot. So what I confused for a reboot was the fact that Soul Eater re-aired the episodes that it already created. They just put new openings and endings in the episodes. I didn't realize that. When they re-aired those episodes, I thought they were Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhooding the anime up to that point where the manga was, but no, I was wrong. So I'm glad that I was called out on that in the comments. I appreciate it. Yes, I was wrong about Soul Eater having a reboot. That being said, while I would enjoy a Soul Eater reboot, I don't think it's likely at this point. I think that they're going to continue to create the Fire Force anime to completion, especially since the manga seems to be wrapping up soon. It should be wrapping up within the first few months of 2021, if I had to guess, if not toward the halfway point of the year, but Fire Force is ending. And the creator is supposedly retiring after that, so I don't think that we're going to get a Soul Eater reboot. I could be very wrong. There is enough content that could potentially deem a reboot. I just don't think it's as likely, especially since, and this is my opinion, the ending of Soul Eater wasn't good. It was one of the most anticlimactic endings to a manga, despite all of the build-up that led up to it. It was disappointing. I will just say that. So I think that plays against its favor. So I don't think a Soul Eater reboot would happen. It would be cool again. Like I said, it would be cool to see, especially depending on how, Fire Force ties into Soul Eater, if at all. There are definitely nods to it, but we'll see. Another one that I was wrong about, and I was only wrong about it because this wasn't the case when I made the video. DN Angel is now finishing. The DN Angel manga is coming to a close very soon from what I read online, so this would definitely be the time for it to get a reboot of the anime or a continuation. Best option definitely would be to do a reboot of the anime as a whole. Just do a whole updated package of the entire thing. One of the criteria I had in my original video for listing, anime that needed a reboot was that the source material had to have been completed. It couldn't be an ongoing thing, which that was my own criteria just to kind of limit things, because by all means there are still other continuing manga or anime or whatnot that could use a reboot. Haven't yet, and I'll get to that later because there's obviously one in particular that I will mention. But at the time, that was my stipulation for why I didn't include it in my list. But because DN Angel is ending very soon, it is a lot more likely now that it could get a reboot of its anime, and I would not be opposed to it. With that in mind, I would definitely put DN Angel in my current top 5 anime that need a reboot that are the most likely. Because, again, when I made my list, one of the other criteria for my list in determining the placement was the likelihood of a reboot happening, like what were the chances of it? And I stick by my reasoning for the first time around, but with everything that's changed since it's been a year and a half since that last video, my list has definitely changed up a little bit, so I will say that. Another thing that I got wrong, and my opinion on this, I shouldn't have listed Dead Man Wonderland as an honorable mention. From what I heard, it screwed the pooch bad with the anime adaptation. I don't even think it deserves a reboot at this point. That's just my opinion on it. I don't think it should have been an honorable mention on my point. I listed Batum as well. I don't have any further opinions on that. I haven't looked into it further, so I'm just gonna kind of keep that there. Yeah, my honorable mentions were kind of, you know, my list as a whole I thought was better, so I'll say that. Another thing that I was wrong about, I did not mention series like Slam Dunk, Prince of Tennis, Air Gear, or Trigun. Those are all series that definitely should have had mentions, if not, you know, putting them in the list altogether. Slam Dunk, obviously, is one of the top 10 best-selling manga of all time, and it's a sports series on top of that. That's crazy. I mean, it's not the only high-selling sports series of all time, but the fact that it is in the top 10 is significant. And the anime, from what I'm aware of, did not cover everything in the manga, so it's possible that we could get either a reboot or a continuation. I think maybe a continuation would be more likely, but still. Prince of Tennis has had a lot more content happen since the original anime, but then again, it's also had several OVAs, it's had so many stage plays, it has had, I know there's news of like more anime content or something coming out in the future, but that being said, it still definitely deserved an honorable mention, at least, when I made the original video, and I didn't, so that's why I'm putting it here. Air Gear is a series that I have never read before, never watched before. I need to, though, because it looks interesting as hell. And this one should have made my list, in all honesty. And it makes my current list, I'll say that right now. Because the Air Gear anime only had 26 episodes, but the manga lasted for 358 chapters. That is so much untapped potential to be made into a rebooted anime. So that is my own personal blunder there for not having Air Gear the first time around. So yeah. And then last but not least, Trigun. That was another one that should have made my list. Trigun is another series that I did not watch or read, but should. I fully recognize that. And it's so nostalgic that I really should. This is one, especially because of the author's comments on the anime, that deserves a reboot. Because the author said that there's no room for a continuation of the anime based on how the anime ended. But considering that the manga continued until 2007 and the original anime, I believe, aired in 1998, there's a lot of untapped potential there too that they could definitely explore. So yeah, that was another my bad on there for not including Trigun on my original list. Another thing that I had wrong, in my opinion here, so what makes Gantz a little less likely, in my opinion, to have a new anime adaptation would be the fact that it would be long, which does make that less likely to happen. Not that it's impossible, because, I mean, Fruits Basket in itself, the reboot is a long one, because it's got 3 seasons. The first season was 24 episodes, second season was 24 episodes, the third season should be at least 12 episodes, if not 24. I'm not aware of how close or like what is the episode to manga chapter ratio with those. I don't know, but either way, it definitely puts it on the longer side in terms of anime reboots. So it's not impossible for Gantz to be rebooted with covering everything, but it would be a lot, and that is a big time commitment, which that, you know, that's one of the major reasons as to why that anime today, for the most part, isn't a weekly ongoing endeavor. It's split up into 12 or 24 episode seasons. Sometimes you have more, where a studio does take on longer periods of time. JoJo is an example of that. The basketball anime Ahiro no Sora is an example of that. Black Clover was originally supposed to be that because the original first season was only going to be 48 episodes, and then TV Tokyo and whatnot were like, holy crap, we're making a lot of money with this anime. So yeah, we're going to make it weekly. So for anyone that hates on Black Clover, it is one of the top 5, money makers for TV Tokyo in terms of broadcast. So like it brings in the money, even though Studio Pierrot, skimps out on the quality here and there. So just wanted to put that out there real quick. So yeah, I think an anime adaptation, like a complete anime adaptation for Gantz is still possible. It's a little less likely, but I think that, there has been enough renewed interest over the years that we could see it happen. Another thing that I'm putting in my wrong category, and this is just me subjective about my own list. I think that Princess Jellyfish would still be a good reboot to have, but I'm thinking that maybe we won't get more after it, or more anime adaptations for it, just because there was a live action series that happened in 2018. So because that happened, I think that it's less likely that we could have a rebooted anime. It doesn't completely eliminate it, but it's one that we could see a reboot still happening, but because of how like recent that content was, that's where I'm kind of saying I might be wrong about it. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention on my what I got wrong list, and again, subjective here, while I still think that a reboot of Maid-sama, which was my number 1 in my original list, would be great, it didn't have the manga sales that a series like Fruits Basket had to warrant having a anime reboot. Now that being said, manga sales are not everything. As I mentioned with Black Clover, part of the reason why it's as successful as it is right now is because of the numbers that it pulls in for TV Tokyo with the anime compared to the manga. The manga still sells well. The manga is fine. The manga is not at risk of being canceled at any point in time. There are other series that are selling better than that. I will not say anything against that. Which is the same point that could be made with Maid-sama. Just because a series didn't sell, like 20 plus million copies like a lot of the other big selling manga of all time, doesn't mean that the anime wasn't popular. I mean, by all means, the author made new content, new like epilogue content years after the original Maid-sama came out, which is more reason why it should have had a reboot or continuation back when that stuff happened, but it didn't. And, because of that, maybe we are moving a little bit farther away from the potential of Maid-sama having a reboot, but I still think it's worth it. I still think that it's worth having a reboot for Maid-sama at this point in time. Whether we get it or not remains to be seen, but I think it deserves to have an anime reboot, but I do think that I was wrong in, assessing it as highly as I did. I think I was wrong in assessing it as highly as I did. And again, like I had mentioned, I missed several other series that also could have had a reboot. So yeah, that's why I'm putting it in my wrong category. But that at least takes me out of the wrong category and puts me in the more miscellaneous notes that I had about my original video. So wanted to give a quick shout out to 2 of the comments that I had. One of the comments said that a Sonic anime reboot should happen. Yes, I think a new Sonic anime would be fantastic nowadays. I mean, the Sonic X anime was a guilty pleasure back in the 4Kids days, and it would be really cool to see a more modern take on Sonic in anime form. So yes, I think a Sonic anime reboot would be fantastic. I completely agree with that. Another one of my original commenters mentioned a Guyver reboot. And I think that sounds good, especially with the fact that, there was the Ultraman reboot manga anime that happened on Netflix. I think that it definitely, could lend to a Guyver reboot. Why not? Guyver is a cool concept. It's, it's very tokusatsu, it's very Japanese hero awesomeness. I could totally see a reboot happening. I don't know that it's necessarily as likely as, other stuff, but because of the fact that Japan loves reviving old Japanese heroes, or loves reviving older tokusatsu themes and whatnot, yeah, a Guyver anime reboot could definitely happen. Or like a Guyver CGI anime movie. That'd be cool. I could totally see that. I mentioned before moving away from the... Well, not necessarily moving away from the comments from the previous video. I think at this point in time, when talking about the Mashima series, when talking about Rave Master, Fairy Tail, Eden Zero, I don't think that we're going to see a Rave Master anime reboot at this time. The best thing that we can hope for, though, is seeing Mashima's Heroes 3-series crossover happening and that getting animated. I think that would be absolutely fantastic because, yeah, there was a lot of awesome fan service and cool moments in the crossover. Compared to the previous crossover, which was just Rave Master and Fairy Tail, this time around they actually have like the updated cast for Rave Master in it. We had our 2 dragon characters in there, which was awesome. So that would definitely be cool to see them animated for the first time. So I would absolutely love that. On the note of Rave Master, it really is probably out of the question at this point. The more likely thing to happen is that they're gonna, continue forward with Eden Zero, and maybe they're going to adapt the anime for 100-year quest for Fairy Tail, just because that's been more recent. The unfortunate thing for Rave Master, and people are going to see this when Eden Zero comes out, is the fact that Mashima likes to take elements from his previous series and put it in his most recent series. So if they were to bring out Rave Master now, people would be questioning, why is the same thing happening in 3 different series? And that's not a fault of Rave Master, especially for the fact that Rave Master did it all first. But because people aren't as familiar with Rave Master, they're just gonna think that, oh, Mashima's just recycling his stuff and putting it in Rave Master, not realizing that Rave Master came first. So that's just the unfortunate thing. He's got 2 more recent series that are gonna have more of a focus pulled toward them. So yeah, it's not likely that we're gonna see a Rave Master anime reboot. It would be great if we could see the manga re-released. That would be fantastic, and I definitely recommend reading the Rave Master manga if you can. But yeah, I think that at this point in anime really is unfortunately out of the question. Now, just like D and Angel, another series that I kept off of the original list because it's not completed is Berserk. Yes, obviously Berserk needs a reboot. Let's be honest. It needs a reboot. It does. Like the CGI anime stuff that came out looked awful. Absolutely awful. And while the original series, from what I read online, looked good for the time that it was made, it wasn't as faithful to the manga from what I've heard. So yeah, Berserk definitely needs an anime reboot, since it hasn't had a good one. It hasn't had a good anime that the manga deserves. So yes, Berserk obviously needs a reboot. As for whether or not it will get one, who knows? Maybe when the Berserk manga ends, whenever that is, then we'll get an anime reboot chronicling the whole thing, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't follow Berserk closely enough to know what's happening with it. It's one of the manga that, yes, it's on my list. I have not read Berserk yet. Part of the reason for it is just because of hearing how many hiatuses after hiatuses there were. Not necessarily as bad as Hunter x Hunter, but still. I mean, I was into Hunter x Hunter before the hiatus stuff happened, so I mean, that's just kind of a thing there. So yes, Berserk deserves a reboot. Will it get one? Maybe down the line, but who knows. One of the other things I wanted to mention, looking at other lists online, other news articles for like what other anime deserve reboots. I kept seeing Rurouni Kenshin, Yu Yu Hakusho, and the original Yu-Gi-Oh! On a lot of these lists online, but in my opinion, none of them need a reboot. None of them do. Like, Rurouni Kenshin, it doesn't deserve to be touched because of everything that happened with the author. But on top of that, Rurouni Kenshin has had absolutely fantastic live action movies, so it doesn't need to have an anime reboot. Like, if you want to see it in a new way, go check out the live action movies. Rurouni Kenshin is played by the actor for Kamen Rider Denno from the title series there. Absolutely fantastic. Go watch that. Don't need a reboot. Don't need that. Yu Yu Hakusho. The original anime covered everything. It did. Other than like the final chapter, which was like covered in an OVA that more recently happened. I don't know when it aired. I know it. I'm pretty confident that it happened. I just haven't watched it yet. Mostly because I'm hoping that they'll over at Funimation they'll dub it, because that is how I consumed Yu Yu Hakusho, was through the dub. But we will see. That one, either way, it does not need a reboot. Like, part of the reason Yu Yu Hakusho is as great as it is because of the nostalgia of when it was created, when it was made. Like, it's great. It's great as is. It doesn't need to be touched. End of story. And then the original Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know what the reasoning necessarily was for this. The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Was fine. Was it perfect? No. Obviously, there's a lot of things that happen with Yu-Gi-Oh! But Dark Side of Dimensions, the movie, was a fantastic way to more or less finish off the story of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, what more do you need? Like, that was fantastic. You don't need to have anything else other than, you don't need to reboot the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. It doesn't need to be touched. So, I don't know why that one was on the list either, but that's my opinion on that. Other than that, I'm still really glad that two of the predictions that I had came true. The prediction that Bleach would continue and that Shaman King would get a reboot. I'm super happy that those two things are happening. I'm happy that both of those fandoms are getting the chance to, in Shaman King's corner, getting to see the full series accurately translated into anime with updated visuals that make it look freaking badass. And then Bleach for getting continued, because that was one of the unfortunate things, was that it just stopped because, again, another victim of just being a continuing, ongoing weekly series. They kept catching up. That was one of the biggest issues Bleach had, was that it kept catching up to the source material, and they had to keep inserting filler arcs over and over and over again. So now that it's finished, you don't have to worry about another filler arc taking up time in Bleach. So that is great. That is absolutely fantastic. And other than that, and I'm just gonna reiterate this one more time, I still think that Maid-sama has a strong shot at getting a reboot, but I think at this point, D and Angel moved to the top of the reboot continuation list in terms of how realistic it is for it to get one. Again, just because the manga is ending now, so this is the perfect time to create an anime to capitalize on that. It's the perfect timing. Whether we get it or not, we'll see, but I think at this point it is the most likely. So, if I were to have a more recent and updated top 5 list for the top 5 anime that need a reboot in order of most likely, in my opinion, to least likely, I'm putting D and Angel at number 1, Maid-sama at number 2, I'm going to put Air Gear at number 3, Gantz at number 4, and Eyeshield 21 at number 5. But that being said, I want to hear what you guys think. If you guys watched my original video and you are back for the second one, thank you, first and foremost, for coming back and watching the second video. Secondly, what do you guys think of, what I covered, what I was wrong about, what I was right about? Any and all thoughts, would love to hear what you guys think. Sorry, I apologize to anyone that is a Rave Master fan that was really looking forward to a potential reboot, and I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. I really, really wanted a Rave Master reboot, but it's so unlikely at this point, just based on the fact that we are getting the Eden Zero anime in spring, and in all honesty, Fairy Tail coming back with the 100-Year Quest anime. That's more likely at this point than a Rave Master anime, so I'm super bummed out about it. I am. I sympathize. So if you're right there with me, let me know in the comments, and we will cry about this together. Yeah, it pains me. It pains me. It does. It really does. But yeah, these are my current thoughts on the series. And like I said, I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. As for upcoming content for the rest of December, I know I have said it 1,000 times. I've said it's been coming out over and over and over again. The part 2 of the Arcs That Anime Forgot iShield 21 edition will be coming out next week, closer to Christmas. Because the best time to cover the Christmas Bowl arc is during the week of Christmas. So I've got some editing, recording, and whatnot to finish up with that. So I plan to have that out by Christmas, if not on Christmas. Hopefully before that, just because Christmas is a Friday and that's when I upload my podcast. Speaking of my podcast, I still have 2 more episodes planned covering elements of 2020. So we'll see which one gets released first, but I will have an episode on Christmas, and then I will have one on January 1st, since that is also a Friday. So the 2 topics that I will be covering, I'm still going to cover the top 10, or my top 10 favorite new anime of 2020. And that one's going to feature My Girlfriend Pastel You, and we're going to go over the new anime that happened in 2020 that were still good despite 2020 being a thing. So we've got a few more things that we need to watch in order to finalize our list, but that will still happen either on Christmas or January 1st, depending on the progress of my other video. The other one that I'm doing, and this is the one that I'm really still trying to cram stuff in for, is my top 20 new manga of 2020 list. I'm still reading a absolutely nuts amount of manga in order to round out my list, because no, my list is not all Shonen Jump titles, because as I have found out this year after researching and finding 12 pages worth of new 12 Microsoft Word pages worth of new content. Yeah, a lot of manga came out in 2020. Not all of it survived. As I was even reading today, when I found out that Paper Bag Kun got canceled and ended in 2020 despite beginning in 2020. I was so bummed. So yeah, I'm still working on that list as well. So I wanted to make sure though that I had a more rounded opinion and watched more read more things in order to have a more well-rounded opinion on that. But that is the other podcast that I will be making, so look forward to both of those coming up in the next 2 weeks. If anything, I will warn that it is possible that one or both of those videos might be released on a Saturday rather than a Friday, just because of how busy the holidays are, but you will still be getting 2 weeks of podcasts, so look forward to those. Both of them are going to be really fun. The top 20 top 20 new manga of 2020 in particular is going to be a very fun video for me to make, just because there are so many awesome new manga that I want to recommend leading into 2021. So look forward to that. Otherwise, for now, thank you guys, for anyone that has listened this far into the podcast. Thank you for all the support that I've been getting lately. Thank you to all of the new subscribers. For anyone that is new, thank you for checking out my channel. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed already and you are interested in watching more of my content, please hit that subscribe button so you can be alerted as to when all my new content comes out. It might be a pipe dream, but I would love it if I could hit 100 followers or 100 subscribers by the end of the year. I know it's a pipe dream. It would be super awesome, but otherwise, at least, you know, I support all of the love and support I've gotten so far, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. So thank you to everyone that has subscribed. Thank you to everyone that has interacted with my content. Thank you for being here. You guys make it all worth it. But for now, my name is Jordan, aka Axel Ablaze, and yeah, I'm gonna go reread Rave Master since I'm not getting my reboot anytime soon. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.